So that being said, so we've both played a bunch of zombie games. We haven't played the same zombie games. Like some of them we have played together. Like
Yes.
we played Left 4 Dead together. We've both separately played 7 Days to Die, which is a really bad game to sort of pick up and play just for 5 minutes, which is why we didn't play it longer. I mean, I've played it longer. You've played it longer, but not together.
Yeah.
You've played State of Decay.
Yep. That was a real. That's probably one of the things that triggered me to sort of try some zombie games. It was on a Steam sale. It was like £5. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. But then suddenly, where you're building up your community, and it's a community building game essentially, and then on one trek home later on in the game, like maybe 4 to 5 hours in, you end up across a big horde, and one of your main characters just gets ripped into. It's like, oh, well,
Yep.
And that permadeath thing, the consequences of it, is something I really enjoy in games. I really enjoy like playing Minecraft on hardcore mode. It adds a dimension to the game, makes you. It's consequences. It makes you more thoughtful.
I'm kind of
about
amazed you've not played more roguelikes, to be honest.
Hmm.
Because that's, I mean, Noita's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Randomized start, which as you play, you can unlock more and more options for the start.
Mhm.
But once you die, that run through is done. Like, we're going to reset the world and the character.
So it's interesting. The genre kind of pulls me in. One thing you mentioned about different types of zombies. A game that I got into, it was just a punt. Oh, let's see what this is like. Project Zomboid. It doesn't look much graphically, and it's like a hardcore survival. A scratch can kill you, that sort of thing. If you leave it untreated, it can kill you through normal infection. You don't just become a zombie. And in that, the zombies are all the same. Some of them go slow and some of them stagger a bit more quickly. But pretty much they are all the same. And you can get hordes of
There's no special
them.
class.
There's no special class of zombie. And I think that's really interesting because the game really isn't a zombie game as much as it's a will you survive game. And the zombies themselves
I
keep the flow going.
disagree. I think that's more of a zombie game than something that puts in classes of zombies to keep it interesting.
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
because something like Left 4 Dead, for example, has the base zombies that you see a lot of, and then you've got the ones with the big tongues, the smokers, and you've got the screamers and the boomers, and I mean, I'm thinking more of Left 4 Dead 2. You get the witch, but they've all got their own behavior. There's specials that are put in specifically to raise the stakes in this moment. And if you're doing too well in Left 4 Dead 2, they'll throw more of them in, and
they'll try and balance the difficulty. Yeah,
right. But to me, that's a bit like putting in a mid-boss or a boss into the game, right? That makes it a bit more Devil May Cry than a zombie game for me. But that's only because I'm thinking of zombies as like the old like Day of the Dead. They're all a shambling horde, and the problem is you don't have the ammunition to kill all of them. Like eventually you're going to fall down.
Yeah. I mean, there are great consequences in Zomboy because it's more of I think you'd call it a simulation game. Because if you don't drink, you're going to die. If you don't eat, you're going to die. If you don't stay warm, you're going to die. And there is a winter that comes. So you start in the springtime, and as the year progresses, there is a point at which you are going to freeze to death if you've not sorted yourself out. And things like the electricity and the water go off. I think the water by default goes off after 6 months. At that point, you've got to scavenge or have built something to collect water. And yes, the ever-present zombie threat. None of there is one instance in the game. It's called the helicopter. It's the bane of all new players. Sometime between day 10 and day 30, a helicopter finds you. It doesn't pick you up and rescue you, but it does attract all the zombies to exactly where you are. And it's a random event between those two times. It's like, okay,
that's kind of it.
But that's to progress to put an emphasis on the game going forward. But it is very, very challenging. I don't think there is a difficulty slider. I think you can change the difficulty by changing like the range at which they can hear you or see you or smell you. So that's the other thing. If you don't wash, they can smell you as well. I don't know if it has wind.
I mean, that's why I shower every day.
To protect yourself from zombies. I'm going to try that on the kids. How much will therapy cost later on?
Dad of the year. My kids have excellent hygiene, but now can't sleep.
Yes, they keep hearing
Um,
groaning.
I mean, I think it's kind of interesting because zombies, especially after The Walking Dead came out, did become like the go-to genre for a while. Like if you had a game, you had to put zombies in it.
Would you say they took
Fortnite
over?
started off as a zombie game.
Yes, it was a defense game, wasn't it? Would you say that
Yeah,
zombies pretty much took over from where vampires were, sort of like the decade before?
yeah, very much so. I mean, I don't remember the same kind of. I think the last real surge of all these games having the same DNA before zombies that I can remember would be first-person shooters.
Yeah.
Once, I mean, it started kind of with Wolfenstein 3D, the original,
Oh
which
yes.
is not
Yeah.
technically a 3D game. It's a 2.5D, and that led a bit of interest. And there were a few clones with different other companies, and there was Rise of the Triads and a few other games.
Yeah.
And then Doom came out. And when Doom came out, it led to the traditional media hysteria of, oh, this demonic game is teaching kids to be Satan worshippers. I'm like, oh, they're shooting the zombies.
Yeah.
But suddenly everyone was making it first-person shooters. Like it was the
Yes.
only viable product. You had to be making them. And that lasted a good 5 or 10 years. Like it was the go-to genre. And then, I mean, 10 is probably a bit long. And then they sort of petered out. And suddenly there was a 5-year period where everything had to have zombies in it. Like just had to.
Yeah. I mean, even if it wasn't the main game, there'd be like zombie mode that you could turn on.
Yeah, I remember I picked up Saints Row 3. Love Saints Row 3. Really stupid game. Saints Row 3 is my favorite GTA game, by far. There's a zombie mode in it.
Have you played the zombie mode? Or is it
yes,
just there?
It's just there. It's not that interesting, but it's in there.
Yeah. I mean, zombies are one of those really weird things. Do you think they prey on sort of like our concerns as a being? The dead coming
Yeah, I
back
mean, like
and
most of the best monsters, they're based on a fear. Like the best one I heard is that zombies are the fear of consumerism, right? The sort of restless, unstopping proletariat horde that you just can't possibly deal with.
right.
But they can stand for whatever you want them to stand for.
I mean,
in the same way that vampires, when Bram Stoker's writing about vampires, they're really about syphilis and power, right? That's what Dracula is. He's a stand-in for social ills. When they just become Bond villain, they're a little less interesting.
that's very true. So one of the things that I've discovered when sort of like playing all of these different genres is some games the zombies that are there are a threat but never scary as such. Like in Dying Light, at nighttime it can feel a little bit more scary if you turn a corner and one's in front of you, but that's more of a jump scare than, oh, that doesn't feel good. But interestingly, so 7 Days to Die, this is when I played it quite a bit, maybe a year and a half ago. So it's not as fleshed out or as beautiful as it is these days. And I remember just going through my first night, and 7 Days to Die is one of those games that has pitch black at night. There's very little, if any, light. And I was sat there in a house, and there was just this groaning and moaning. But I was playing the game in the dark and just the screen in this pitch black, and I didn't know whether that zombie was in the house because I hadn't checked around, and I know that they can creep in and knock things through and climb over certain objects. I was like, I wasn't scared as such, but I wasn't feeling comfortable. I'll put it that way. I felt on edge, uneasy.
I mean, okay, zombies don't have to be scary. Like they can be
No.
overwhelming,
Yep.
but a zombie game isn't necessarily a horror game. A great example of a failed horror game would be like Fear 3, which tries to be really scary, but gives you all the ammunition and weaponry in the world. You have far too much agency to be scared. In the same way that the first time I played Doom, the original Doom, I don't particularly like horror movies and horror games. I don't enjoy being scared. I don't go out of my way to seek the experience. But running down a darkened corridor with zombies trying to leap at me while I'm carrying a chainsaw isn't scary. It's immense fun, but it's not scary.